Why did the wind suddenly feel like it was holding its breath? The grass had gone still, never completely but enough that Fallen Mercer noticed. On the prairie, stillness was never peace. It was warning. 6 feet below the ridgeline, she pressed her cheek into soil that remembered more blood than history books ever would. The earth was cool, patient, honest. Her ghillie suit, woven by hand, threaded with dying grass and crushed sage, blended her into the late summer prairie so completely that even she sometimes forgot where her body ended and the land began. 3 days. That's how long she'd been here, waiting, listening, becoming invisible. Most people saw nothing when they looked across eastern Montana, just emptiness, wind, grass. But Fallen saw stories written in motion, how the stems bent, how insects fled, how heat moved when something didn't belong. Her thermal scope pulsed softly against her eye. 3 vehicles, 2 miles northeast, moving slow, careful. Marrow Brigade. And in the second vehicle, because he always chose the middle, was Garrett Voss. Her former instructor. Her betrayer. The reason her squad had died screaming into radios that never answered. Fallen's finger rested beside the trigger, not on it, never until the moment mattered. Her grandfather had taught her that when she was 9, lying in this same grass, listening to old war stories whispered like prayers. Between heartbeats, he'd said, that's where truth lives. She breathed. Then the radio crackled. Not her frequency. Military, poorly secured. Echo 7, mark your positions. 60 seconds from touchdown. Fallen froze. Her jaw tightened as she swept the scope west. Empty prairie, then. Heat blooming from the sky. A helicopter running dark, no lights, banking hard. No, she whispered. Not to the radio, not to the sky, but to the grass itself. The bird flared and touched down hard. Rotor wash flattened the prairie in violent circles, exposing everything the land had been hiding. 10 figures spilled out, fast, disciplined. Navy SEALs. They spread into a defensive perimeter that would have been flawless anywhere else. Here, it was suicide. Fallen switched frequencies and broke their encryption in under a minute. Her voice came low, calm, female. Echo 7, abort, extract now. Silence. Then suspicion. Identify yourself. Someone who knows this ground better than you do, she said. You landed in a kill box. They didn't believe her yet. They were still confident, still thinking the grass was just grass. She scanned north. And the grass moved wrong. Against the wind. Men crawling, 1, 3, 5 more behind them. Thermals bloomed, rifles, machine guns, and RPG. 30 hostiles at least. The ambush had already been written. The SEALs just hadn't read it yet. You have enemy movement on your northern ridge, Fallen said. Thermals, crew-served weapons, 90 seconds to contact. Who the hell are you? The team leader demanded. She didn't answer. She was watching a machine gun settle into position, barrel aligning with the helicopter's fuel tanks. The turbines were still whining, too slow. Fallen exhaled. Between heartbeats, the world steadied. Wind 9 miles per hour, gusting 12. Distance 340 meters. Grass, little bluestem, hollow stems, drift 6 inches. Her finger moved. The shot didn't sound like a gunshot. It sounded like a hand striking wood. The machine gunner disappeared backward into the grass. For a moment, no one understood what had happened. Then panic bloomed. Fallen was already moving, 8 meters south, melting into a depression she'd memorized days ago. The grass closed behind her like water. What was that? Someone shouted over the radio. She didn't answer. Another hostile stood to scan. She adjusted, fired. Another body swallowed by the prairie. 2 shots, 2 lives ended, and still they couldn't see her. Because she wasn't hiding from the grass. She was the grass. The SEAL leader's voice cut through again, tighter now. Unknown shooter, identify yourself. Fallen watched an RPG rise. If you don't move, she said quietly, you all die. The RPG gunner steadied his aim. She waited for the gust to pass. Then fired. 4 rounds, 4 threats erased. Automatic fire erupted from the ridge, bullets shredding grass at chest height. The SEALs dropped flat, pinned, confused, terrified. We can't move, the leader said. You don't need to, Fallen replied. I'll move for you. She flowed through the prairie, slow, deliberate, invisible. Every movement was a conversation with the land. Her suit masked heat. Crushed vegetation confused thermals. Old knowledge layered with modern science. Men rose. Men died. The ridge dissolved into chaos. Then she heard shouting. Fuel containers. Fire. They're going to burn the field, she said. She had 6 rounds left. She chose. Shots cracked, bottles shattered, flames bloomed but turned against the attackers, driving them back into their own panic. Smoke rose. The helicopter finally lifted. Echo 7 is airborne, someone breathed. They were alive. Fallen should have felt relief. Instead, she felt something colder. Garrett Voss's convoy was gone. 3 years of hunting vanished. She could have stayed silent, could have let the ambush happen, could have finished her mission. She didn't. Her radio crackled. We owe you our lives, at least tell us who you are. Fallen stopped moving. The grass swayed eternal. I don't exist, she said. She pulled the battery and disappeared east, leaving nothing behind but wind, stems, and unanswered questions. But the prairie remembered. And somewhere behind her, destiny had already begun to shift. Why did the phone vibrate when she was finally alone again? Fallen Mercer stopped mid-step, one knee pressed into damp earth, the prairie opening around her like a held breath. She hadn't powered the satellite phone on in hours. She never did unless she had to. Out here, connection was weakness, noise, a thread someone else could pull. The vibration came again, insistent, real. For a long moment, she considered smashing the device against a rock and letting the grass swallow the pieces. That would be easy, clean, the kind of decision she'd been making for 3 years. Instead, she pulled it from its waterproof pouch. Encrypted prefix, military. Her chest tightened, not fear, not anger, but something closer to recognition. As if the land itself had nudged her shoulder and whispered, pay attention. She answered. This is a secure line, a voice said, older, calm, the kind of calm that came from decades of surviving the things that killed younger men. Who is this? Fallen didn't respond. The man didn't rush her. Silence stretched, comfortable on his end, respectful. That alone told her more than his rank ever could. I was on that helicopter, he continued. Name's Master Sergeant Hollis Thorne, Army, attached to Echo 7 as senior advisor. Still nothing from her. You saved 10 lives today, Thorne said. That gives you the right to hang up. But before you do, you should know Garrett Voss broke down 6 miles north of your position. He'll be there till morning. Her grip tightened until her knuckles whitened. How do you know that name? She asked. Same way you do, Thorne replied. Only difference is I've read the classified version, the one where your Ranger squad didn't just die, they were sold. The prairie wind whispered through grass like breath through teeth. They had declared her dead after that ambush. KIA, a convenient ending, no survivor to ask questions, no one to hunt the man who'd cashed in $8 million and walked away. Except she hadn't died. She had learned how to disappear. You want something, Fallen said. Yes, Thorne answered simply, and I think you already know what it is. She looked north. Voss, 6 miles, close enough to end 3 years of waiting before dawn. Then Thorne spoke again. Raven 12 is under attack. The words landed heavier than gunfire. Outpost, logistics and intel personnel, he continued. 43 people, not fighters. They've got 15 minutes. Send your SEALs, Fallen said. They're 30 minutes out and low on ammo. By the time they arrive, it'll be a recovery. Silence pressed in. Fallen closed her eyes. 3 years ago, she'd hidden while her squad died. Stayed small. Let the grass cover her shame. She told herself survival was victory, but the truth had followed her like a shadow. Voss is leading the assault, Thorne said quietly. Her eyes opened. He planned this, she said. Yes. He's baiting me. Yes. Another pause, longer this time. Why would I risk everything for people I don't know? Fallen asked. Thorne didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice was softer. Because saving them won't bring your team back, but it might finally prove you survived for a reason. The wind shifted, cooler now, night moving in. Fallen looked north again, then west. Revenge. Or responsibility. She turned west. I work alone, she said. Understood, Thorne replied. We'll stay out of your way. The line went dead. Fallen began to move. Darkness changed the prairie. The air cooled fast, grass stiffening, insects trading day songs for night ones. Thermal layers shifted, turning the land into a living puzzle of heat and absence. Fallen moved through it like water finding its path. 2 miles from Raven 12, she went aground. Thermal scope up. 58 hostiles, more than reported. Their formation told her everything. Voss's handwriting was all over it. Pin the defenders, break morale, overwhelm. She synced into the outpost's frequency and listened. Controlled panic, ammunition counts, breathing held tight. Then she spoke. Raven 12, this is an external asset north of your position. Immediate suspicion, identify yourself. No authorization, no name, just someone who doesn't like your odds. A pause, voices murmuring. Master Sergeant Thorne vouches for you, Colonel Stryker said. What's your assessment? She gave it calm, precise, no drama. They'll hit in 6 minutes. Can you disrupt them? I can remove command, she said. But this is a trap, he wants me exposed. Another pause. Then why are you here? Stryker asked. Fallen watched Voss through thermal bloom, confident, gesturing, alive. Because I'm tired of hiding while people die. Silence. Then what do you need? Stay dark, she said, and don't shoot the grass. She cut the radio. Her first shot killed the mortar team leader. Her second took the gunner. Chaos rippled outward like heat in water. She moved, shot, relocated. The grass hit her steps, bent away, whispered corrections. RPG teams fell. Machine guns went silent. The assault faltered. Then Voss spoke. His voice carried across the field through loudspeakers. Hello, Fallen. Her blood ran cold. I taught you Technique 7, he said conversationally. Do you remember its weakness? She did. Once the prey knows it's hunted, the hunter becomes predictable. Automatic fire tore through grass near her position. Close, too close. Thermal sensors, he'd seeded the field. You have 2 choices, Voss continued. Stay hidden and watch Raven 12 burn, or show yourself. Her radio crackled, Echo 7 offering support, Thorne urging restraint. Fallen stared through the scope at the man who destroyed her life. The wind carried rain. She made her decision. I need a distraction, she said. The helicopter came in low, door guns blazing. Every hostile turned skyward. Fallen ran. She rose from the grass like smoke, closing distance she'd never risked before. 10 meters. Shots, bodies falling. Then pain. A bullet burned across her ribs. She rolled, fired, missed. Cole's shot saved her life. Voss ran. She chased. The grass betrayed him, bent stems fatting heat. Then the trap snapped shut. She went down. Blood soaked into soil that had already taken so much. Voss stood over her, rifle steady. "Your squad died because you weren't good enough," he said. $8 million. She raised her pistol with her off hand. "You taught me something else," she whispered. "That statistics don't matter when there's no other choice." She fired. Armor caught it. He ran. Darkness closed in. When she woke, it was under white lights. 16 hours later. Voss was gone. The outpost was safe. And the weight of her choice settled deep. She had saved strangers. And lost her hunt. Or so she thought. Because as Colonel Stryker entered with a photograph of 3 captured rangers, Fallen felt the prairie whisper again. The hunt wasn't over. It was just changing shape. Sometimes redemption doesn't arrive quietly. Sometimes it demands everything. Why did the photograph feel heavier than the gunshot wound? Fallen stared at the screen long after Colonel Stryker stopped talking. 3 faces, bruised, exhausted, alive, but only barely. 2 men and 1 woman, hands bound, standing in front of a barn she recognized before her mind allowed the memory to surface. Firebase Keller. The place where everything had ended 3 years ago. The place where the grass had first taught her how to hide while her world burned. "They were taken 4 days ago," Stryker said. "Proof of life arrived this morning." Fallen swallowed. Her shoulder throbbed, pain radiating down her arm in slow, deliberate waves. The doctors had warned her not to move it. Hadn't mattered. Pain was familiar. Pain was honest. "What does Voss want?" she asked. Stryker didn't look away. "You." The word landed without drama, without ceremony, just truth. 48 hours, he continued. "He wants the exchange at Firebase Keller, same place your squad was lost." Of course he did. Voss understood cruelty the way some men understood poetry. He didn't just kill people. He arranged their deaths to echo. "It's a trap," Thorne said from the corner of the room. "Yes," Stryker agreed, "an obvious one." Fallen finally looked away from the photo. "Then why are we talking about it?" "Because," Stryker replied evenly, 3 American soldiers will die if we don't." Silence filled the room. Fallen closed her eyes. 3 years ago, she had listened to her team die one by one through a radio she couldn't answer without revealing herself. She had survived by staying hidden, by choosing herself over them. She had told herself that was strength. Now the universe was asking the question again. Only this time, it wasn't pretending there was a clean answer. "If I go," Fallen said, "he kills me and probably kills them anyway." "Yes," Stryker said. "If I don't," she continued, "he kills them slowly to punish me." "Yes." Thorne shifted. "We can plan an assault, full package, Rangers air support." "Not in 48 hours, Stryker cut in. "Not without turning 3 hostages into execution footage." Fallen exhaled. The prairie didn't judge, her grandfather had said. It just remembered. She looked at Thorne. "Tell me about Korea again." Stryker frowned. "This isn't the time." "It is," Fallen said quietly. Stryker hesitated, then nodded once and stepped out. Thorne sat down slowly, like a man lowering himself into old memory. "We were pinned near Hill 180, he said. "Chinese forces pushing hard. My spotter took a round through the femoral artery. Bad one." Fallen listened. "I tied off what I could," Thorne continued. "But I had orders. Battalion commander was exposed. If he went down, thousands were dead." "And your spotter?" Fallen asked. Thorne's jaw tightened. "Bled out while I was covering the withdrawal." Silence. Did you regret it? She asked. Every day, he said. And also no, because the mission mattered, and that truth never gets easier. Fallon opened her eyes. I'm going to Firebase Keller, she said. Thorne didn't argue, he only nodded. They tried to stop her. Medics, guards, orders over radios. Thorne overruled them all. The gate opened. The grass waited. Fallon walked into it with her rifle slung over her good shoulder, every step pulling pain through muscle and memory alike. 48 miles northeast, 16 hours of movement, rain forecast by dawn. Good. Rain blurred thermals. Rain made the grass louder than footsteps. She welcomed it. By sunrise, she reached the ridgeline overlooking Firebase Keller. The outpost was a scar. Collapsed buildings, breached walls, prairie reclaiming concrete the way it always did, patiently, without apology. She counted. 73 fighters visible. Then more emerged. 100. Then more. Her chest tightened. 123. Voss hadn't come to trade. He'd come to end her. Loudspeakers crackled. Welcome home, Fallon. She didn't move. You're wondering if you can still save them, Voss continued. You can't. He stood on the roof of the central building, arms spread, daring her. Walk through the gate in 10 minutes, he said, and I'll let the Rangers go. A gunshot echoed. A warning. 9 minutes. Fallon keyed her radio. I need options. Thorne's voice came back fast. QRF is 12 miles out, 20 minutes. Too late, she said. She studied the compound again. Not the men, not the weapons. The grass. Patches of it had grown inside the walls, between cracks, along foundations, forgotten by soldiers too focused on the perimeter to notice the land reclaiming itself. The prairie didn't stop at walls. It never had. She stood. Every thermal scope swung toward her instantly. Red lasers painted her chest. Voss laughed. There she is. She raised her hands and began walking. Each step hurt. Each step felt like surrender. At 20 meters, she keyed the radio one last time. When this starts, she said, don't hesitate. She pulled the battery. 10 meters. The gate opened. She dropped her weapons. Voss stepped forward, smiling. You always were predictable, he said. She met his eyes. So were you. She dropped straight down. Chaos bloomed. Her backup pistol came up. 2 shots, 2 guards down. She rolled into the grass growing inside the compound. Grass no one had been watching. Bullets tore through empty space. She was already gone. Inside the barn, 3 Rangers stared at her like she was a ghost. Can you move? She asked. They nodded. Outside, mortars began falling. Thorne hadn't waited. They ran. The wall breach loomed. Voss appeared, firing wildly. Fallon turned and fired her small pistol anyway. The shot staggered him. Then another rifle cracked from the ridge. Voss fell. Hard. Still. Rain washed blood into the dirt. Fallon dove through the breach into grass that closed around her like forgiveness. Dawn broke pale and quiet. Firebase Keller burned behind them. The Rangers lived. Voss was dead. Fallon sat on wet grass, exhaustion settling into her bones. Thorne sat beside her. You okay? He asked. She nodded slowly. Cole approached, holding out a coin. You're one of us now, he said. Fallon hesitated, then took it. The weight surprised her. Belonging always did. She stood and walked back into the grass. Not hiding. Not running. Just moving forward. Because sometimes redemption doesn't come from winning. Sometimes it comes from choosing who you refuse to let die. Why did silence feel louder than the firefight ever had? Fallen sat alone at the edge of the temporary aid station, rain still dripping from the brim of her hood, hands wrapped around a metal cup she hadn't touched. Medics moved past her without speaking. No one asked for autographs. No one called her a hero. They didn't know what to call her. Neither did she. Firebase Keller smoldered in the distance, its last flames curling into the gray morning like exhausted ghosts. The prairie was already reclaiming it. Steam rose where fire met rain. By tomorrow, it would look like nothing had ever happened. That scared her more than the bullets had. Mercer. She looked up. Colonel Stryker stood a few steps away, helmet under his arm, eyes ringed with fatigue. Not the kind sleep fixed. The kind that settled into a man's bones after too many choices that couldn't be undone. "You disobeyed direct orders," he said. Fallen nodded once. "Yes, sir." "You violated containment protocols. You went in wounded. You compromised an active negotiation." "Yes, sir." A long pause. "And you brought all 3 Rangers home alive." She didn't respond. Stryker exhaled slowly. "Do you know how close this came to ending very differently?" "Yes, sir." "Good," he said. "Then you also know why I can't put this in a report." That made her look at him. "You don't exist on paper," Stryker continued. "Officially, Garrett Voss died in a skirmish with unknown hostiles. Officially, Raven 12 held. Officially, you were never here." Fallen absorbed that. No medals. No absolution. No public ending. Just silence again. "Is that a punishment?" she asked. Stryker studied her carefully. "No, it's a mercy." He hesitated, then added, "and a question." She waited. "What do you do now, Fallen Mercer, now that the man who defined your shadow is gone?" The question landed harder than any accusation. She didn't answer. Because she didn't know. 3 days later, she walked away from the forward base before dawn. No farewell, no ceremony, just a rucksack, a rifle, and a body that still hurt in places doctors hadn't bothered to name. The grass greeted her like an old friend, familiar, indifferent, honest. She moved east, no destination, just distance. At night she dreamed of radios crackling, of voices calling her name, of silence swallowing them whole. She woke with her hand on her weapon more than once, heart racing, shame clinging like sweat. She told herself she was done, that she'd paid her debt. But the prairie didn't let lies last long. On the 5th night she heard gunfire. Distant, scattered, wrong. She climbed a low rise and watched through thermals. A pickup truck, civilian, engine smoking, 3 heat signatures inside, one more smaller lying still beside it. Opposite them 6 armed men, irregulars, no discipline, no formation. Raiders. Fallen stayed still. Not her mission. Not her fight. Not her responsibility. She watched one raider yank open the passenger door and drag a woman out by the arm. The heat signature inside the truck spiked, panic. Fallen closed her eyes. This was the part no one warned you about. After the war, after the enemy was gone, when the choice came back stripped of uniforms and ideology. Stay hidden. Or act. Her grandfather's voice surfaced, uninvited. "The land doesn't care who's right," he'd said. "It just remembers who stood up." Fallen opened her eyes. One shot. The raider dropped. Chaos erupted. She moved. Not fast, not loud, just precise. 2 more fell before the others understood they were being hunted. The survivors ran. Fallen didn't chase. She approached the truck slowly, rifle lowered. The woman stared at her like she wasn't real. Blood streaked her cheek. Her hands shook. "It's over," Fallen said softly. The words felt strange in her mouth. The woman nodded, then broke. Fallen stood there awkwardly as the stranger cried against her shoulder, the way people did when danger finally loosened its grip. Fallen didn't hug back. She didn't know how. But she didn't pull away either. Word traveled. It always did. By the time Fallen reached the Riverlands 2 weeks later, people had started whispering. About a ghost. About a woman who appeared from nowhere when things were about to go wrong. The Grass Phantom. She hated the name. It turned survival into mythology, made people forget the fear, the cost. She tried to avoid towns, tried to keep moving. But one evening, a boy met her on a dirt road and refused to step aside. "You're her," he said. Fallen stopped. "I don't know who you mean," she replied. "The one who doesn't let bad men win," the boy insisted. "They said you'd come." Her chest tightened. "Who's they?" she asked. The boy pointed back toward a cluster of lights barely visible against the horizon. "My sister." Fallen followed. The camp was small. Refugees. Displaced families caught between borders that meant nothing to the people with guns. They looked at Fallen with hope she hadn't earned and couldn't afford. A woman stepped forward, her face lined with exhaustion. "They took our food," she said. "They'll be back." Fallen said nothing. That night she lay awake listening to the wind and wondering when helping became hiding again. Wondering if this endless, quiet violence was what she'd been spared for. At dawn, engines approached. Fallen rose. She didn't announce herself, didn't threaten, didn't negotiate. The raiders left fewer tracks than they'd arrived with. The camp survived. Weeks passed. Fallen moved from shadow to shadow, never staying long, never giving anyone time to learn her face. Each time she helped, the weight inside her shifted, not lighter but different, less sharp, less poisonous. Still heavy. Always heavy. One night she sat by a river, cleaning her rifle under a sky too full of stars. Her radio, long silent, crackled. She froze. "Fallen," Thorn's voice said. She closed her eyes. "You're hard to find," he continued. "That used to be the point." "What do you want?" she asked. "There's a unit," he said. "Unofficial, denied, mostly women, operators who don't fit clean lines." She listened. "They need someone who understands invisibility," Thorn finished. "Someone who knows what it costs." Fallen stared at the water, watching it carry moonlight away. "And if I say no?" she asked. "Then nothing changes," Thorn said. "You keep doing what you're doing, alone." Silence. She thought of the camp, of the boy, of the woman crying against her shoulder. She thought of the rangers walking free. She thought of her squad's voices, finally quiet. "I don't want to be a symbol," she said. Thorn's reply was gentle. "Then don't be a shield." The radio clicked off. Fallen sat there until dawn. When the sun rose, she stood. She wasn't healed. She wasn't finished. But for the first time, she wasn't just surviving either. Sometimes redemption doesn't roar. Sometimes it walks quietly toward the next place it's needed. And lets the grass close behind it. Why did the offer feel heavier than any rifle she'd ever carried? Fallen stood at the edge of the airstrip as dawn peeled the night away, the smell of fuel mixing with wet earth. The aircraft waited without markings, gray, forgettable, designed to leave no memory behind. No flag, no unit insignia, just a machine built to arrive, depart, and never be mentioned again. She hadn't said yes yet. She turned the coin over in her fingers. The one Cole had given her back at Keller, worn smooth by other hands, other wars, belonging compressed into metal. She hadn't meant to keep it. Somehow it had stayed. A woman stepped into the light near the aircraft. Short hair, calm eyes, the kind of posture that came from years of learning how to stand without inviting attention. Fallen Mercer, she said, not a question. Depends who's asking. Captain Lena Voss. Most people just call me Lena, if they call me anything at all. Fallen studied her. No wasted movement, no need to prove anything. They said you were dead, Fallen said. Lena smiled faintly. They say that about all of us eventually. They walked together toward the plane, stopping short of the ramp. We don't wear uniforms, Lena continued. We don't get medals, and when things go wrong, no one comes looking. Fallen nodded. I know the pitch. This isn't a pitch, Lena said. It's a warning. Fallen looked at the aircraft again, at the open door. What's the mission? She asked. Lena's eyes darkened. Extraction, border region, hostages mostly women, the kind of place where silence is enforced. Fallen's jaw tightened. And the team? She asked. Lena hesitated just a fraction of a second. 4, including you. That made Fallen pause. 4 is light, she said. So is hope, Lena replied. Fallen exhaled slowly. She thought of the prairie, of grass bending without breaking, of how invisibility could be protection or abandonment. I'll go, Fallen said, but I don't take orders from ghosts. Lena smiled again, this time with something like relief. Good, neither do we. They flew low, always low. The world passed beneath them in fractured pieces, mountains dissolving into valleys, roads thinning into scars. Fallen listened more than she spoke. The others didn't fill the silence with bravado or war stories. They checked gear, adjusted straps, breathed. Across from her sat a woman barely older than 25, eyes sharp, hands steady. I'm Nor, she said quietly, sniper before all this. Fallen nodded. Fallen. Nor hesitated. They said you were the grass phantom. Fallen's mouth tightened. They say a lot of things. Nor smiled softly. I hope it's true. The aircraft banked. Lena leaned in. We go dark in 30 seconds. Fallen felt the familiar tightening in her chest. Not fear. Readiness. The moment before becoming something narrower and sharper than a person. The village lay in a basin of shadow, ringed by hills like watchful sentries. No lights, no movement. Silence pressed in heavy and deliberate. Too deliberate. They moved in single file, slipping between stone and dust, Fallen senses stretching outward. The land here wasn't grass. It was gravel, hard angles, echoes, harder to disappear. She adjusted. Gunfire erupted without warning. Tracer rounds tore through the darkness, slamming into stone. Ambush. Contact, Lena hissed. They scattered, took cover. Fallen dropped low, heart hammering, counting breaths. She scanned, found the heat signatures elevated, overlapping. Too organized for raiders. Professional, she murmured. They expected us. Nor returned fire, precise, controlled. Fallen crawled, inch by inch, letting the chaos pull eyes away from her movement. She found a line of approach, a drainage ditch half filled with debris and old water. She slid into it and vanished. Time stretched. She emerged behind the enemy's flank and rose just long enough to fire. 2 down. She moved again. The fight ended not with victory, but with absence, the sudden realization by the attackers that they were losing something they couldn't see. Silence returned. Breathing slowed. Lena's voice whispered over comms, "We're clear, move." They reached the holding structure, a school once maybe, now barred and dark. Inside, the air smelled of fear. 27 women, bruised, hungry, eyes that had learned not to hope. Fallen knelt, lowering her rifle. "You're safe," she said. The words didn't feel true yet. A woman reached out, fingers trembling, and touched Fallen's sleeve, as if checking whether she was solid. "You came back," the woman whispered. Fallen swallowed. "Yes," she said, "we did." Extraction was messy. Vehicles arrived too soon, too many. They fought their way out, covering each other, dragging the wounded, refusing to leave anyone behind. Fallen took a round to the thigh and kept moving, teeth clenched, vision narrowing. The aircraft lifted under fire. Only when the doors closed did Fallen sag against the bulkhead, breath ragged. Nor pressed a bandage to her leg. "You okay?" Fallen nodded. "I will be." She meant it. Hours later, as the women were ushered into safety, Lena sat beside Fallen. "You could still walk away," she said. Fallen stared at her bloodied hands. "I won't," she replied. Lena studied her, then nodded. "You don't disappear anymore," she said. "You choose when to be seen." Fallen thought of the prairie again, of grass bending toward the sun after fire passed through. She closed her eyes. She was still broken, still carrying names she would never forget. But now, when silence came, it wasn't empty. It was waiting. Sometimes strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's the decision to stay, even when no one would blame you for leaving. Why did the quiet feel earned for the first time in her life? Fallen stood alone on the ridgeline as the sun slipped low, turning the land the color of old gold. The mission site was already gone behind her. No smoke, no noise, no proof that anything terrible had happened there at all. That was how their work ended now, not with celebration, with absence. Below her, the grass moved in long, patient waves. She rested her rifle against her leg and breathed, slow and deliberate. Her thigh still ached where the bullet had torn through muscle. Her ribs remembered the past too well. Pain had become a language she spoke fluently, but tonight it didn't demand anything from her. For once, it just existed. "You always walk off alone afterward," Lena said behind her. Fallen didn't turn. "Someone has to make sure it's really over." Lena stepped up beside her, eyes scanning the horizon. "And is it?" Fallen watched the grass bend, then rise again. "For them," she said, "yes." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't press or accuse, the kind that let you feel the weight of what hadn't happened, the lives that would continue quietly, unnoticed by the world. "You saved 27 people," Lena said. Fallen shook her head. "We did." Lena studied her. "You still don't take credit." "I take responsibility," Fallen replied. "Credit belongs to people who get to stop." Lena smiled faintly. "You don't plan to." Fallen didn't answer. Because the truth was settling into her bones with an unfamiliar steadiness. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding in the grass to disappear. She was choosing where to stand. And that changed everything. Weeks later, the call came in the middle of the night. Fallen woke before the radio crackled, instincts dragging her out of sleep like a hand on her shoulder. She listened first, to the wind, to the building, to the subtle signals that told her whether danger was already inside. Then the radio spoke. "Asset request," Thorne's voice said, older now, roughened by time. "Last one if you want it." Fallen sat up slowly. "What kind of last?" she asked. "The kind where you don't go back out afterward," Thorne replied. "The kind where someone else carries it forward." Her chest tightened. "Location?" she asked. Thorne hesitated. "Montana." The word landed gently, almost kindly. "Same prairie," he continued, "different problem." Fallen closed her eyes. She had crossed borders, deserts, cities that swallowed people whole. And still, the land that shaped her had been waiting, patient as ever. "I'll take it," she said. The compound sat low and quiet, pretending to be agricultural. From above, it was nothing. From the ground, it hummed with intent. Fallen lay prone on a familiar ridge, the grass whispering against her sleeves. Same wind patterns, same stars overhead, different woman breathing beneath them. Inside the compound, a trafficker watched a monitor, confident in walls and distance and money. He didn't know the land remembered her. Fallen adjusted her scope, heart steady, not racing, not angry. just resolved. She thought of her squad not as they died but as they had lived, laughing, complaining, trusting her. She thought of the rangers she'd pulled from the barn, of the women who had clutched her sleeve like proof. She thought of the girl she had been, once, lying in this grass beside her grandfather, learning that stillness could be a weapon if you respected it enough. The shot came clean. Not loud, not dramatic. Final. The compound unraveled quietly after that, confusion replacing cruelty, doors opening that had never been meant to. Fallen didn't move until it was done. Then she stood. Not because it was safe. Because it was time. Dawn found her walking back through the grass, rifle slung, shoulders lighter than they'd been in years. She stopped at the crest of the hill and looked back one last time. The land didn't thank her. It didn't need to. It simply accepted her footsteps and let them fade. At the extraction point, Lena waited, nor stood nearby, scanning out of habit more than necessity. That was clean, Nor said. Fallen nodded. It needed to be. Lena handed her a small patch unmarked plain fabric. No symbol, no rank. What's this? Fallen asked. A beginning, Lena replied. Not for you, for them. Fallen understood. She knelt and pressed the patch into the dirt, anchoring it beneath the grass where only the land would know it was there. A marker without a name. I'm done leading from the front, Fallen said quietly. Lena searched her face. You sure? Fallen stood, meeting her eyes. I don't disappear anymore, she said, but I don't need to be the blade either. Someone else is ready. Nor looked away, swallowing. The helicopter lifted them gently, the prairie shrinking beneath spinning blades. Fallen watched until the land became a pattern again. Months later, she sat on a porch as evening settled in, the sound of wind moving through grass like a familiar voice calling her name. No rifle within arm's reach. No radio crackling in the dark. Just a cup of coffee cooling in her hands. She still woke some nights with her heart racing, still felt the weight of names she would never speak aloud. Healing, she had learned, wasn't a straight line. But when the quiet came now, it didn't accuse her. It rested beside her. A message arrived on her phone, no sender. They made it across. Fallen smiled faintly. She didn't reply. She didn't need to. The grass swayed under a darkening sky, endless and unassuming, holding every footprint it had ever known. Fallen Mercer leaned back and let the wind move through her, no longer hiding, no longer hunted. Just present. Because sometimes strength doesn't announce itself. Sometimes dignity doesn't ask to be seen. It simply acts. And then knows when to let the land carry the rest.